Hey everybody, I'm excited to be here with my friend Dana, Butterfly McCoy. Dana is the founder of Featherweight Productions. She is a singer, songwriter, actress, producer. Dana, you're going to have to fill in some blanks for me there. But I'm so thrilled to have you. We met on the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for President Trail, and we connected pretty quickly. You were so nice to be on a podcast with me, like a montage that we compiled, and we've had several discussions since then. And I'm excited to get to know you and hear more about your story. So thanks for being here.
I feel the same about you, Paul.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. You're up in Cape Cod, you said, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Home of Hyannisport, so to speak, and
We're
so there's a Kennedy connection there, and
big
we
time.
definitely identify with the values of Bobby Kennedy, and I'm sure that will come up as well as a few other things. I also, in having some discussions with you, really appreciate not just your creativity and your gifts, but your intelligence and your humanity and all of these things that really represent the kind of message we want here at the Curators to present to our audience. So it's gonna be a great discussion, I'm sure.
I'm
Um,
honored. Thank you for
you
saying
know,
that.
I like to ask if you don't mind, if you could just share with us what kind of led you down this path of uh, writing music, singing, uh, being a producer, an actress. What was your calling like?
It started so young. Um, I think I was born into it. I almost feel like my songs sing me a lot of the times.
Hmm.
When I was very young, uh, I grew up in Newton, Mass. Actually, well, I've moved a lot in various places. My parents divorced when I was young, and they lived in different places, Virginia and Massachusetts, and then each of them were moving for their jobs, and my brother and I were moving between them. And I, the whole time, I think I just had music as my company somehow. I don't know. It's just always been with me, Paul. I don't know that this is a great answer. Maybe I really can't answer it. Um, I know that I started writing plays at 10. I've been singing along with the radio since I could talk. I've been singing. And not that that not that I'm great at that, in fact, but my ear is quite good. So I would sing harmonies along with Marvin Gaye and whoever was on the radio. Um, and it's just bubbled out of me over time as this best friend that has brought me joy consistently and still doing so.
Mm.
And I write plays as well. And those are stories that just make me, I, I don't know, just, it's like, yeah, it's like a great friend that I get to be with and listen to. And then I just pour out onto the page what I hear.
Fascinating. Fascinating. The best I can come up with for myself, Dana, is that I'm a frustrated DJ. So, but I'm always sending people songs. I'll compile a list and I'll say, here's 10 songs that I thought of because of you, and
Oh,
I enjoy doing that sort of thing. But it's funny you mentioned Marvin Gaye,
mm.
a great voice from the 60s and 70s. He reminds me of that sort of anti-war song from the civil rights era, the anti-war era.
Mhm.
And, I feel like, Dana, unless I come in contact with someone like you, that a lot of that music is missing from today's, world. And if somebody writes an anti-war song, they might be accused of being a Republican today, as opposed as opposed to what it was back in the 60s.
I just
The
saw a pig
Democratic.
fly by.
What's that?
I just saw a pig fly by. I mean,
Yes, right,
it's
right.
interesting. Such an interesting time we live in. The polls seem to be reversing and shifting.
Reversing and shifting, and the Democrats were, and this goes to a prior conversation we had about politics, but the Democrats used to be the party of civil rights and of peace and the middle class and so many things that I identified with growing up, you know, uh, that seems to have all changed and shifted. And I'm not ready to say that the Republicans are necessarily the party of peace and the middle class and all of that, but I do sense that they've kind of moved in that direction, if only to oppose the warmongering and the censorship and the tactics of the left now, which is have really done a 180 over recent years. What do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you said it so well. It's shocking. It's shocking to me as a lifelong Democrat until recently, until really Bernie Sanders. I only long and interesting, funny, terrible story of how I ended up recently having to renew my license. And while there at the DMV in New York City, always an experience, I changed to be an independent. And independent suits me anyway. Why wouldn't everyone be an independent so that you can just then choose which person is best for the job rather than the party? Because the party is a private entity beholden only to its shareholders, and that's just simply not democratic. And
Right.
so I've been feeling, as I think many of us, and perhaps yourself too, that we the people are being ignored.
More
And
and more so over time. Yeah.
right. And then people, and it's probably Citizens United has lots to do with this, which was, I'm sure, something that was kind of in existence well before it was passed into law in 2010. But now that money is allowed to be in politics at the level that it is, the corruption's just, I don't know. There's no safe place anymore. Like, we could get behind a candidate such as RFK Jr., about whom I was so and am still very excited. I mean, it's sad what's happening to him. But he had values. I could vote for him. I could vote for a person I believed in and who was eloquent and could speak about history, geology, geography, the planet, and its different political factions over time. I mean, just so bright. And then he would see problems and have ideas and plans for how to solve them. And for a man like that, and I'm sure many of the other independent candidates who've come along, to just be consistently squelched and squashed and like little bugs under the thumb of the DNC is the one I'm focused on because I'm most disappointed in them as a Democrat. But I'm sure the RNC isn't any better. I just haven't been watching them. It's surprising. It's surprising to be where I am now.
51% of the voting public now identifies as being independent. So there's a growing number of us, right?
Huh?
And when I was young, I remember, people in our neighborhood, we knew that there were Democrats, we knew that there were Republicans, but there was a sense, it was like rooting for the Mets and the Yankees. We were all sports fans, we were all baseball fans, but we didn't hate on each other for being on different teams, right? But today's team approach to politics, especially within DC, and the message that is projected out to the masses, it seems to be more reminiscent of the Roman Colosseum than it does a baseball diamond,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's turning into a fight to the death. And if you ask me, you mentioned the Republicans before. Uh, I don't know that they're any better than the Democrats, and I want to circle back to Citizens United, as you mentioned. But I've been saying for quite a long time now, Dana, that the party that is most inclined toward authoritarianism in this country is the party that's in power.
Hmm.
So the Democrats have been in power. They have gone ahead and embraced many different policies and strategies that have allowed them to maintain that clutch on power that they simply don't want to relinquish in a free and fair election to the Republicans, especially Donald Trump. And I get that. I understand why a party wouldn't want Donald Trump back in office.
Why do you suppose that is? Seems like
Well,
it seems
I
like
think they would argue that it's that Donald Trump is an outright threat to democracy, but you can't defeat tyranny with tyranny,
right.
which is exactly what the Democrats have done. So this is the dilemma, and this has been coming to a head, right? It's been happening over a period of probably a few decades, but more in recent years since Trump did get elected. And now we're faced with this impossible task of, basically two evil forces mirroring each other.
Yes. Right now, there are a lot of books out there and podcasts and the terminology associated with narcissism, and everyone is calling Donald Trump a narcissist. And I think he might well be. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but there's projection going on towards him and projection about what he's doing. Meanwhile, that's what's being done. Lawfare. In fact, on the subject of lawfare, I heard the Democrats talking about that, or I'm sorry, the Republicans saying that lawfare is being hurled at Trump. The Democrats are using the legal system and the Department of Justice and so forth as a weapon, and how un-American and horrible that is, and I agree. But I didn't think that was the case. I thought, no, he has broken the law. So I think that public officials should be held to a higher standard rather than a lower one, including the president. In fact, they should be a better example, not be able to get around the law, but more culpable for it. So meanwhile, now we've got the Democrats. I've seen now what they did to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Working on the case, working on the campaign pretty closely, I see that he has been blocked at every turn. So here he is a candidate for the Democratic Party, and I guess the DNC is just not responsible to have to support him. So that's one thing. It's already, I think it's undemocratic that they don't support someone that had a lot of focus and interest from Democrats. But not only did they not support him, they blocked him at every turn. They spent millions blocking him, and they did it through the legal system. And seeing that, okay, so let me give some examples. I mean, most people are going to know these, but I had some interesting specific experiences. One was I did not have the honor of helping collect signatures here in Massachusetts. I live here and in New York, which makes me particularly sensitive to what RFK went through in New York. So I didn't help collect signatures here, but I happened to get to go with the campaigners that delivered the signatures at the State House in Boston. And it was a fabulous group of excited, happy people. And
That's our movement.
Yes. And I don't know how many boxes, those file boxes, there were something like 12 of them filled with 16,000 signatures. And, now it came time to go in, and certain of the, the leaders of the little factions that had collected these signatures went into the State House.
And they only needed 5,000, if I'm thinking properly, in Massachusetts, right? So this was 3x plus, right? Which is typical of what the campaign did.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the signatures were not counted because what was said was, we're not going to count these because RFK is making an announcement later today. We'll wait and see what it is before we count them. And there's still some kind of jiggery pokery going on there with, because I think understanding the numbers of people that support this person would make a difference, even if though now he's asked not to be on the ballot, which breaks my heart. So anyway, but later that same day, after we delivered these signatures, RFK suspended his campaign in the swing states. We were all together watching it in Somerville. I was just like, oh. And then I happened to go down to New York for some work I was doing there. And I heard that there was a court case that was about whether, RFK, I guess, was disputing the fact that he was being removed from the ballot there because of a technicality on his address. Instead of just saying, we don't accept this address, could you please put your real legal address or correct address, or we consider this your legal address, and fixing it, they threw the over 100,000 signatures out that were collected for over $1 million it took in New York. 100,000 people, citizens, voters, were just ignored over a technicality. And so now that I see it,
yeah, go ahead, finish.
I sat in the courtroom for 3 hours listening to the baloney, if I may, that was going on about it.
You're being kind.
I'm being so kind. I realized, they are definitely using lawfare against Trump. He probably did break laws, but I think Biden broke laws. I think these people break law, So it just, for me as a citizen, I sit back, catch my breath, and say, I think I'm going to have to readjust my perspective here.
Mm-hmm. And, a little more, because I was privy to some of the info. So New York used to have a law that said an independent candidate had to obtain 15,000 signatures to be on the ballot. A few years ago, they increased that number from 15,000 to 45,000.
Right, 45.
Why? Basically arbitrarily just raising the threshold to make it much more difficult for an independent candidate. And they only allowed a 6-week window for those signatures to be gathered from mid-April to toward the end of May. And Bobby comes in with 135,000 signatures or more. I can't remember the exact number. And so nationally, he came in with well over, I believe it was 1.3 million signatures nationally.
Yeah.
By far the greatest number of ballot signatures in American history. And the federal requirements for being a candidate for president are very simple, right? You need to be 35 years old. You need to be born in the U.S. You need to be a citizen. Mm-hmm. These are very simple requirements, and then you can run to be president. But what the Democrats did here was they unleashed, like you said, this lawfare, but they did it on a state-by-state basis, draining the campaign's resources, forcing Bobby to fly and to go to different places in the country. Therefore, he couldn't campaign. And it really, really broke my heart. I think that, what I'm hoping, Dana, is that people understand just how sinister this is and what a true threat this is to democracy. I don't care if you're the staunchest Democrat, the bluest of blue. If you support that kind of politicking in the United States, then we're all in deep trouble, right? Because we don't have a democracy if a candidate like Bobby Kennedy cannot even be represented in the ballot box.
Amen, Paul. I mean, I even have said when friends, because most of my dearest friends are, like you were just describing, the bluest of blue Democrats. And it's because of great reasons. Like me, they were raised liberal. They were raised to believe in human rights, as I do and as I am. But somewhere along the line, I'm noticing that the Democratic Party shifted more into a financial model. And it isn't all those other things that used to be represented anymore. But they are still believing that it is, and I am not. I won't even say I'm right. I'm just telling how I see it. I want to just mention, and this is very incendiary, I'm a Unitarian Universalist, a UU. extremely liberal church. I feel like I can't even safely discuss this there because I mean, and again, the hearts are, I believe, so in the right place, but the belief in what is right and what is wrong here is fixed at such a level that there's no American version of discussion, debate, spirited debate among friends. This is how I hone my ideas. I want to be able to talk with my friends. I run into problems with my college friends that I adore, because they're so sure they're right, and they're ready to just pounce on me before before I can even get a word in edgewise. I'm sorry.
Same here.
You know,
I throw epistemology at people. I say, okay, there's what we believe, right? There's our opinion, which may or may not be informed. There's our belief system, and then there's what we know. And we need to focus on the difference between those, because a lot people who are so combative in their tone never come from a place of knowledge or knowing. They come from a place of opinion and insecurity in that opinion, and that becomes the source of their tribal rhetoric, because they really aren't comfortable in their own words and what they're saying.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'll enjoy meditating on that idea. That's great.
It's been my experience.
I want to say, I think it's important that I, for example, and maybe all of us, consider what you've just said and think, am I in the silo? Am I in the echo chamber? Do I think I know and I need to do more research? I'm always researching, because I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to be in some rigid place of knowing what I don't necessarily understand. And I'm interested in listening and understanding others, and I'd like to be heard as well. But most important is really listening, isn't it?
Without a doubt. That to that point, a lot of people in the Kennedy movement, because Bobby Kennedy has been in recovery for 40 years, right? A lot of people in the Kennedy movement are also in recovery, and you hear a lot of people say, America needs a 12-step program.
Oh God.
Right? And it's so true. And speaking about the silo, I think the point there is that so many people on both sides are so good at pointing out the deficiencies in the other side, that side is living in a bubble. That side is living in a silo. They're closed-minded. They're not willing to entertain new ideas. They're not, they're wrong. We're right. And it becomes about that. And each side, that's why I said before, they mirror each other, because each side is doing that. And that, to me, is like having a red and a blue deck chair on the Titanic. We're never going to sail anywhere with that mindset in America. And we have to unhijack people's brains to open them up, to be able to get them to think critically.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Now you've set me in a few different directions. One is a 12-step program thing that I like is the set-aside prayer. And do you know that one?
I've heard of it. I'm not intimately familiar with it.
Well, it's higher power or God, whatever.
Set aside everything I think I know
about myself,
please,
about
yes.
you, higher power or God, or whatever you choose to call it, about the program of recovery. Yeah, but setting aside what we think we know is a big deal. Setting that aside to be able to consider. So I'm having to do that quite a bit right now, because I stand by so much of what I heard Robert F. Kennedy Jr. speak about. And now he's asking something of me that I am very, I'm not comfortable with, which is to vote for Trump. I'm just not. I saw the debate last night, and I sat in a circle around a fire of wonderful supporters here in Cape Cod recently and listened. Each person took the talking stick and spoke about, how do you feel about what's happening? We're being asked to vote for Trump. And some people were fine with it because some people on the Kennedy campaign trail are Republicans and they're excited. And I understand that because there is a conversation now beginning, a union of ideas. This is a very left-leaning guy, RFK Jr., and then here are these Trump people that are supporting him totally. They're excited. By the way, on the campaign trail, the rude people, shockingly to me, were the Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind and respectful people were the Trump supporters. Which I wasn't expecting. There it is. My mind's having to open again. And so around that circle, people said yes. Some of them were very, like me, Bernie supporters, real lefties, and we were having a tougher time with it. Our hearts are kind of broken. We thought we have this new movement here. Perhaps an independent candidate could make it and the duopoly could break. And because, of course, I've heard it called the uniparty, that up here above either party are the people in the big pharma, big agri, big, but mainly probably the big military industrial complex. And it'll donate $1 billion to the right and donate $1 billion to the left. And then whoever wins works for them. So it's really the same party. So now if we could have an independent party, maybe there's some chance that money can be removed from politics and voices can be heard again. But so the people around that fire, some were very heartbroken. And what do we do? How can we get in line to vote for Trump? How can we do that for a man who speaks about women the way that he does, which is real? If a European perspective is that, well, who cares about that? It's how he leads. Well, I care about that. And over half the people on the planet are women. If somebody doesn't know how to respect them, why should we put them into a position of leadership? That doesn't make sense. That matters and that counts. And that's obviously I'm speaking as just from my own perspective here. But in the circle, the people, and many of them women, were saying, yes. However, with nuclear war staring down the barrel, what do we do right now?
Mm-hmm. It's a lot to talk about, a lot to unpack there, Dana. Getting back to your point about Citizens United and all of these donations and who become the bosses, right? There's the medical industrial complex, the military, as you said, the media industrial complex, which really controls the narrative. And we've documented countless cases of Bobby Kennedy being censored, and not just censored. Censorship is just part one. Part two is the smear campaign, right? Where they don't just silence him, they create a whole narrative that is completely opposite the man he really is. So they have him painted this way, and they know that most people who follow these liberal-leaning media sources and outlets are gullible enough to believe this crap about him, right? Not everyone, not you, not me. We have left-leaning history, right? But we're wide awake enough to recognize when we're being gaslit and hosed by these people, who, by the way, have their monetary interests aligned with censoring Bobby. And they're working in collusion with the government. You have the media companies, not just the TV companies, but the social media companies, all in collusion with the government, censoring at will, not just Bobby, but other well-known people, just for simply having a minority opinion, not for doing anything against the law or anything incendiary, but simply exercising their right to free speech in America which is everyone's right to do, right?
Yeah.
So all of these industrial complexes, military, monetary, media, uh,
Hmm.
medical, education, industrial complex, the food and agriculture industrial complex, they're all calling the shots, especially since Citizens United. And we, the public, are being turned. I'm going to use the term I've used before. We are being turned into lab rats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I can't talk about
so,
that either. That's another thing that is you can't even discuss. I mean,
oh, we're going to talk about it on the Curators, though.
well, here we go. I mean, I
Yeah.
again, being raised liberal, well, I was raised to question things. That's so much of where education comes in. You be a person who can think critically, can consider different ideas, think carefully, research, etc. So, okay, now these vaccines are coming out and they're not very well tested. So I, like many of us, thought, well, I'm probably not going to be first in line to get that. Let's wait a little. I mean, it was just a logical idea. It wasn't a political idea. It was a purely simple, logical idea. I don't want to be the first one to get that because we don't really know what's going to happen yet. I'll wait a little. That's all. And it became this, what? You're not getting straight in line for that? And the shaming about you're going to make your parents ill. And of course, I went ahead and I got them. I won't get them anymore. And it is, oh, you shouldn't talk about that. But why? I mean, there are so many scientists out there and doctors who are also my doctors quietly telling me, listen, I wouldn't get any more of those. Why is it hush hush? Because of the money behind. It's because of the money behind them. And they've done such a great job of hypnotizing the world, I guess, that all the excess death doesn't register and we don't want to look at that. And it just, yeah.
Right. Excess death, dying sooner in this country, much, much more so than other countries. We have the worst health outcomes of any nation in the industrialized world. And yet, we spend twice as much money per capita on healthcare as any nation on the planet. Something's wrong with that equation, right?
Yeah.
And the whole issue of the vaccines, there's so much I've learned in the last 18 months on this, Dana, because I was one in line. I had a medical condition. I have a medical condition, so I was in line to get the COVID shot. What I've learned has astounded me, and I think that industry has some serious questions surrounding it. Just as one example, people don't know this, but if pediatricians achieve a certain level of vaccination among their children, their patients, they get a huge bonus from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Okay, and that, for example, the FDA, is funded much more than half of their funding comes directly from big pharma, and then a whole bunch more comes from the food industry, as opposed to having the incentives aligned with public interest, which is definitely not the case. This is why these corporations get to write the laws. Now, I want to let you talk about this, but the current farm bill that is sitting in front of the House and the Senate, this is September 11th. This is 24 years hence that tragic day. Yeah, and the farm bill, which I believe threatens a much greater level of damage on American soil than anything that happened on that day in 2001. A much, much greater, almost like a genocide. And here's what I mean by that. The companies that make these pesticides that are being sprayed on our fields are helping to write the laws that not only force the EPA or allow the EPA to raise the limits of pesticides being projected onto our farmland, but it's a very pro-industry model where the companies themselves would be exempt from any lawsuits or any damage or liability that their pesticides or chemicals can cause. So if you get cancer from Roundup being sprayed on someone's field next to yours, you cannot sue the maker of Roundup, which is Bayer, which is Monsanto. So that
So
model, that approach is modeled directly from the Vaccine Injury Act of 1986.
I was going to say this sounds
Taking
familiar.
right. They're taking what worked in '86. You had what 3 or 4 vaccines back then in the early '80s. They get their get out of jail free card through legislation. That was under the Reagan administration. I'm not blaming Reagan. It was the decision they made at the time. But then the vaccine developers said, you know what? We have no downside. We have government source of revenue. We have no marketing expenses. This is a giant cash cow. So they start developing all these vaccines, whether we need them or not.
Yeah.
No immunity testing.
Well, I know they changed the definition of a vaccine a year before they came out with the mRNA vaccines. It used to be a preventive, and now it's just a lessening of a severity of your symptoms and less likely to die, which I don't know how that can even quite be tested.
The correlation between the onset of this vaccine gold rush and the surge in chronic disease in this country has been almost in lockstep, right? Especially, I mean, certain, the one that really gets to me because I see it everywhere is autism. Now, I guess I don't have the right to sit here and say vaccines cause autism because I can't prove that. But I can say definitively that there's a correlation there. And why aren't the agencies we trust for public health getting to the bottom of it, right?
Someone I respect and love, and I can't name because she was terrified. And it's a person who is respected in a community I'm involved with, respected in a broad community, and her child was vaccinated. Her child she had video of the kid running around reading and excited and painting and coloring and excited to learn new things, and vaccinated. And within 15 minutes, she said it was like a curtain came down.
15 minutes.
And she can't talk about it because it's so politically charged. Can you imagine through that?
Dana, I can't imagine. There are countless examples like that. And we're supposed to rely on the vaccine adverse event reporting system, VAERS is called, which estimates I've heard say that approximately 1 to 2% of all adverse events from vaccines are actually reported. So how much do we really know? And there's so many other, it's not just autism, of course, it's ADD, ADHD, allergies, Tourette's, obviously myocarditis we know about now, and cancer, immune system being compromised left and right. So, and countless others. Lyme disease I know is up there as well. But this is a profitable model for the healthcare industry. They like this. That's why I used the term lab rats before. They like what's happening. They like that 60% of America has a chronic disease. They want that number to go up to 90 or 95% because that's a growth model for them.
Which is all that matters in the corporate world. Growth, 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 which sounds like tumor to me.
Right.
You know?
And yeah.
unchecked growth means sickness. Yeah.
Right. Right. And I've been saying it for a while, and I think each time I say it a little more emphatically, and that is that we are exchanging our physical, mental, emotional health, and even years of our lives to keep that profit spigot churning.
Yes, and it's horrifying. And can I just say something? I think why we keep talking about it, and I don't just mean you and me now, I mean in a general sense, it's because it's hard to take in. We grew up, or I'll just speak for myself. So I grew up thinking the government was going to help me. Now I laugh because I don't feel as trusting of that idea, and maybe it was silly to begin with. But I think there was a time, I mean, I'm looking at my elders, some people that I love and respect in my family, for example, and they've worked for the government. They believe that the government is there wanting to help, like to be an American, to be a soldier, to be these things. That means you're for the good. You're for the good. And we believed that because I think maybe there was a time when it was more true. Maybe we were always being a little fooled. I don't know. But now, to try to get our brains around the idea that a profit model could be more important and what's actually at play, I sound probably so innocent and so ridiculous. But for me, that's hard to get my brain around, to believe that people would be saying, that our government agencies would be saying, vaccinate your 6-month-old baby, even though we don't know what might happen, because we want to make the money. I mean, I think it's hard for so many of us to believe, which is why some of this polarization might be happening.
Right. They'd rather buy in. It's like a form of Stockholm syndrome, where they're kind of in love with their captor.
Because what else are you going to do?
What's the option? Right. Exactly. And the financial equivalent would be like back in, if you remember the housing crisis from the 2000s, a Wall Street firm or a bank would offer a mortgage to somebody with no income. It was called a ninja loan, no income, no job. You just get approved for a loan. And they knew that person's home was going to be repossessed, right? They knew the damage it was causing, but they did it anyway because it was benefiting them. And I think every industry can reveal certain examples of that. But when we're talking about healthcare and when we're talking about food, we're talking about basic human needs. And when those get undermined, Dana, then the social contract just breaks down,
Well, okay. Oh, Paul, let's just go for it. Yeah. Population control. I mean, are people talking about that yet? I mean, is this just a sci-fi novel idea that I have? But
yeah, no, it's so there are those who believe that. In fact, I just ordered a book on this. I forget the exact title, but it has the number 300 in it, and it references 300 people who basically control everything. And if they decide there's going to be population control, in their eyes, it's in the best interest of mankind over the long term to have fewer people on the planet, then so shall it be.
Yeah. And then probably none of them elected. So we, the people, once again, left right out of that. Yeah.
Right.
That's the financial thing, I'm sure. People with the most power and money. Well, and yeah.
Well, one thing I learned from you, Dana, is that there are worse things than dying.
Well, yeah. And
tell the audience what I mean by that.
Well, first, and I was having the same instinct of wanting to lift our conversation, because I don't want to go too far down the realm of wah wah. The sorrows of it all, the darkness of it all. But there was a book that someone on a bus, when I was a kid, I was riding a bus down to Washington between my parents, and I sat next to somebody who was a hippie, and he had this book, and he read me one of the opening lines in it. And I think the title of the book was Bringers of the Dawn. Who knows? I was a little kid, young, but there was a line that said, we can't evolve technologically past where we are spiritually. And I've
Love
thought a
it.
lot about that over the years. You know, we are really at this place. We are at a real crossroads. You know, nuclear war is facing us, and it has been for a while. We live with it. And if we don't learn how to consider one another, how to take care of one another, how to talk with one another, these things, we won't make it. So when things are that dire, I think maybe the chance is that we can grow. We might actually grow and evolve. So you mentioned this song that I wrote, and it came in a dream. It downloaded in a dream in the middle of the night. And it was within weeks of seeing Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign announcement that he was running for president. I didn't know anything about him. I thought, that's interesting. You know, I'll give it the 5-minute rule. I'll give it 5 minutes, see what happens. The thing was 90 minutes long, I think, and I was there at the end of it, just so excited.
Activated, like me.
Activated. Yeah. Like, oh my God. I posted on Facebook about it. Look, we have an option. He's wonderful. And I got so much. It's funny to me now because I had no idea what I was getting into at the time. I didn't realize. But people that I really loved were like, he's a womanizer, he's an anti-vaxxer, you know, all the things. So I went and researched and found out, no, he's not. And maybe at one point he was a womanizer, but I don't think
How dare you gather information on your own like that? And
I know, I know, independently thinking, but anyway, so that song downloaded, and it really, I think it ends up encapsulating a lot of what we discussed today. And how, and the chorus is, there are worse things than dying, like living without trying. You know, I think we have to actually stand up now as an American. Another song I wrote back in the 80s was called Sleeping in America. And it just won an award in the fall, best song at this festival called the United Solo Festival, which is the world's largest festival of solo theater. And Sleeping in America is about my feeling that I'm apathetic. I don't know anything about the world. I'm driving on the roads that people put down with our tax dollars, but I have no idea where our tax money goes. I don't know what soldiers are fighting for. I don't know what I'm eating. I don't know any of this stuff. I've been just sleeping in America and like assuming it's all going to be okay. And more I'm waking the hell up. Like, no,
waking up.
I have to.
And that's when the darkness becomes the dawn, is when people start to wake up, like you're talking about. And so, you know, somebody listening to this, and you know, we're talking about serious matters here, existential threats, you know, whether it be, you know, the chronic disease epidemic or the you know, the chemicals in our food, or nuclear war, or, you know, trashing our Bill of Rights. I mean, all of these things are existential by their very nature. So we're talking about very serious things, okay? I want this to be about solutions. I don't think we can get to the solutions until we name the problem, right? And we invite people to acknowledge the problem with us and not blame the other side, which I will not do, right? I see us all as children of God, Dana. So I'm not prepared to say, you're wrong, you're right, or, you know, you're both right and you're both wrong. I'm right and I'm wrong.
And I'm wrong.
You know, we're human. It's a given, right? So how do we get to solutions? And this is, I think, what the nature of the independent movement that Bobby Kennedy invited us into was all about, right? And he took us to a certain point and then made a decision to try to bring his agenda into the Trump administration. I regret him making that decision, or I feel that was not a well-informed decision from where I sit. But I understand why he did it. I don't agree with it.
Why do you think he did it?
Um, I think he did it because he really felt like the Democratic Party was a true threat to the future of our country. And that
Because of censorship
given
and
censorship, and in particular with
the
the
war.
merger, these industrial complexes, when they merge together, the media and the military,
Yeah.
and when censorship becomes a military operation combined with artificial intelligence, when everything we do, is being monitored and surveilled,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I think he associates that Orwellian future, the picture of that, with the Democratic Party of today. And I don't think he's wrong about that. I think if the Republicans were in power, the same thing would happen. That's my opinion. But they're not. So he said, I have this agenda. I want censorship done away with. I want peace in the world. I don't want to see us fighting unnecessary wars, seeing millions of people die unnecessarily. I don't want this chronic disease to kill so many people before their time. He's got some really, really, really important stuff to deal with, and he's super, super qualified to take this on. Nobody's even close to him in terms of, accomplishments and qualifications, right? So I think he knew he had no path to victory. We talked about that before, and somebody from the Trump team reached out to him. He tried to talk to the Harris camp. They would not listen to him. They would not even pick up the phone. But the Trump camp did, and he has this important agenda, and he's like, okay, this is what matters. But to me, I'll stop here, and I want to hear what you have to say. To me, I think he lost sight of the priority. I felt like the priority was and is the independent movement itself, not Bobby Kennedy, not even Bobby Kennedy's agenda, but the independent movement itself, because that encompasses everything. And without that, I think we're in deep trouble.
Well, I would love to learn more from you about that perspective of how the independent movement moves forward, because I think it's important too. I think with the time bomb we have, the ticking bomb, I wish that was an ironic term. I could understand why RFK Jr. did what he did, because I don't think we have time. I would have loved to see him on the debate stage last night. Wow, would that have been different? Wow, would that have been different? Many people, I want to say, I think it's interesting that there was an assassination attempt on Trump. Because even though I know, and many people love Reagan, and somebody attempted to kill him. I don't know what that was about. I know nothing about that, honestly. What I know is that JFK, RFK, MLK, and so on. I'm even going to include John Lennon, because the FBI had a file on him as well. And all these single shooters, I don't know as much about Malcolm X, but I know that he was fighting for the rights of people, and he was killed. Gandhi, all of these people that get killed are the people that are usually fighting for the rights of the people. And so why was Trump shot at? Because I would never, I mean, literally, I kind of joke about it. It's not a joking matter, really, but to say, well, usually they try to kill the good guys. So why did they attempt to kill Trump? Maybe he's not that military industrial complex guy.
I don't think he is.
So maybe that's why I abhor so much of the way that he approaches things. Really, particularly, I'm a feminist. I think misogyny is invisible. But when it comes to existential threat of our planet, I'm willing to set my, just the way the suffragettes did, by the way. They set aside their campaign to get the vote in order to help with slavery. And they ended up waiting 30 more years before he got the vote after black people in this country. Well, black men first. anyway,
Mm-hmm.
there's much I don't align with about Trump, but why'd they try to kill him? Maybe they
Yeah.
can't kill him.
Well, I could be wrong about this, but I do have a theory that you're right that, you know, Trump is a major departure from those other historic figures you mentioned, right? But the Democratic Party of today has been captured by the military, and you know, the CIA's involvement, the FBI. We don't know the degree to which the Democratic Party and all of these secret agencies are you know, working together and aligned. We don't know. It's speculation, at least for me. But it does make some sense that they would see Trump as a threat to that. Now, I view Trump as a threat for a whole host of other reasons,
Yeah.
right? But I don't think it's because
probably.
yeah, and I certainly can see him imposing a military state here at home domestically, you know, which scares the crap out of me. But I don't see him as nearly as aggressive militarily as globally as the Democratic Party, right?
Yeah. Who could have believed it?
Yeah.
Shocking.
But and you know, I listened to the debate last night, Dana, and I mean, I'm one who believes that nobody is beyond redemption. You know, I think I've seen people turn their lives around. You know, and
we share that in common. I believe you. I'm with you there. People can change.
So there was a little part of me that was hoping that, you know, Trump had turned over a new leaf. There was you know, there would be a side of humanity to him that you know, and it may still be in there somewhere, but it never comes out on camera. You know, it just I just don't think he can help himself, and it's a shame because he has the sort of the big personality, the gravitas that, you know, if he had the moral compass and the humility necessary to be the leader of the free world, he could have been one of the great presidents. I really believe that.
Yeah.
But I don't see it happening.
I wonder, do you think he has a chance to win?
I mean, I guess he has a chance. Look, it's still what 7 weeks at least, or 8 weeks until the election. A lot can happen.
Yeah.
But
maybe
a lot can happen.
I wonder, I suppose, I mean, it's terrible to have to think this way, but maybe his self-interest. Now, people who love Trump, and I'm pleased to say that there are people I adore who are trying to help me see Trump in a new light, and they really believe he cares. I don't feel that. I don't sense that. I want to believe that because, like you, I think everyone is redeemable, and but yeah,
I think there's a part of him that probably does care. I think, but at the end of the day, what I've seen is a man who is motivated by self-interest, his own image. You know, there'll be Trump signs on every skyscraper across America, on every billboard on the highway. You know, that to me is what
hubris.
He wants to see happen. You know.
Yeah. All right. So let's just say that. Let's go with that route, understanding that this is our belief and it can be wrong. But let's just, as a thought experiment, go with that for a sec. Maybe his self-interest can work in our favor in the end, because, you know, of the legacy idea, for one thing, he brought in two wonderful, maybe three. I don't know much about Elon Musk, other than he's extremely wealthy and obviously very bright, you know, but I don't know much about his politics or personality or any of that. But I think my sense of Tulsi Gabbard is very good, and is that she's a good person, human. And I obviously have studied RFK extremely carefully. So if they're there, and that's a big if, my big fear is I will throw my back into helping I'm afraid to get on board because I don't want to work hard along with millions of other volunteers and help Trump win, only to what guarantee have we that he doesn't just, oh, well, I know I said that, but what I'm going to do is this. And we've seen that out of him.
Yeah.
But if the legacy idea, for, you know, the sake of the history books and his name and all that self-interest type stuff, leads him to want better people on board and listen to them a bit. Anyway, around the fire, back to that again. The people were like, well, what's our other choice? My fear about the and again, I hope I'm wrong here, because if Kamala wins, I hope I'm wrong about her. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope she actually cares about some of the liberal stances she says she'll take, and that those things happen. But now that Cheney's on board, I don't know. It just looks like a really well manicured glamour.
What does it say that these neocons from yesteryear, like Dick Cheney and I think Bolton and others, are endorsing Kamala Harris and not Donald Trump? What does it say about the party, and what does it say about the people in the party who suddenly think Dick Cheney's a great guy? What did they think of him?
Well, they didn't like Kamala
20 years ago. What's that?
Yeah. Kamala was not well liked until suddenly she was needed.
Right. I just find it, I'm sure a lot of people on the left are jumping up and down over the fact that Dick Cheney is on their team now.
Yeah,
I find that ironic.
Yes, there's all this irony, and not to have stepped over your incredible point too, that how come all of a sudden these people are pretending that Cheney's a good guy? Yeah. So there's a French term I was taught by a woman who, if she sees this, she's going to be furious that I'm she's just very, very much of a Kamala supporter, and
I'll make sure she sees it. Who is it?
We have to breathe deeply together because we love each other so much, but she just can't believe that I'm in the camp I am politically. But she taught me a French phrase, which is, and I hope I get this right, les extrêmes se touchent, meaning the extremes eventually meet. And look what's happening. Okay, again, a pig flew by right then, right outside my window. That Trump and Kennedy are united, and Cheney and the Democratic Party are coming together.
Yes.
What is happening?
What is happening? Strangest possible bedfellows, right?
They're kind of evening out, maybe. Maybe this is the parties kind of starting to just become the same or even out somehow.
It's it's a uni party. I think we have to get back to smaller government that works for the people. There's a lot we can do at the grassroots level. And getting back to the point about solutions, we're working right now on the farm bill to help at least postpone that vote until next year. We don't want this thing getting passed the way it is, because we know it'll have serious effects on the health of Americans and on children. So we're really focused on that. But, longer term, we can focus on things like election integrity, challenging the two-party system, allowing it to be challenged in a democracy. And this all happens, I think, at the grassroots level, where we push the change up from the bottom.
Yeah. Well, one of my first thoughts when I learned about this, if RFK is now asking us to vote for Trump, maybe I will get off the train and just start focusing in on some specific policies. How can I help with the environment? How can I help with something like the farm bill? I come from a family on my father's side of farm people, and I really care so much about the environment. So that is one road that maybe many of us will take, but I hate to see us fractured. And like you said, there are 2 months here. I'm going to watch, listen, keep learning. Because, you know, I don't know if my vote counts, but I'm going to try to cast it in the most well-informed way I can. And I don't even know what
All
that
you can
is.
do,
I
right?
mean, I really
And
am
you
not.
don't have to decide into, listen, I will say this. I as of today, my intention is to vote for Bobby Kennedy. I'm in New Jersey, which is a state he'll be on the ballot in.
Oh,
I If he were not on the ballot in my state, I would either vote for somebody like Chase Oliver, who I think has a lot of really good stuff to say, or nobody. I
okay.
I I can't vote. I cannot vote for Donald Trump. I cannot vote for Kamala Harris. To me, the duopoly is the that's the Titanic I said before, right? That's
Yeah.
the Titanic, and I so and it's not to say that they don't each have some redemptive qualities, right? There ought to be something good you can find in each candidate, but
Yeah.
the whole picture is shaping up, I just in good conscience can't, and I feel like I would be letting the independent movement down if I voted for either one of them.
It just seems like if we zoom all the way out to a planetary perspective, it's about that we're needing to evolve past greed, plain and simple, you know, and I
Well,
don't
I don't
get to
know
see.
if I ever shared. I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but the one image I always point, and we may have talked about this, but I always bring it back to this because it depicts the concept of what you just said perfectly, and that is that in this country, once we went to a fiat-based system of money, and we allowed ourselves to borrow and print, and we became the world's reserve currency. To me, that is the root of the problem, and it basically took America, which was like Bedford Falls in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, and turned us into Pottersville.
Mm.
And we are Pottersville on steroids today. you know Wealth gap beyond comprehension, right? 35 trillion in debt. The deficit's growing astronomically. This is not just untenable. It's can I say it's evil? It feels evil to me.
Yes. Well, greed is not one of the better qualities of humanity.
No, unless you're Gordon Gecko.
Paul, can I just say, I'd vote for you.
I would vote for you too. I'll be your VP. I don't want the headaches. So now that we've determined who should be leading this country, Dana.
Paul.
But it comes down to all of these problems are political problems, and they demand political solutions. But that has to start with the people, and getting out of that captured mindset and beginning to recognize the problems for what they are. And if you're a Democrat, a Republican is not the enemy, and if you're a Republican, the Democrat is not your enemy. There's listening to be done on both sides, like we discussed, and hopefully we can return to that place where, and I want this podcast to be about that, is encouraging that respect for one another that we all deserve, and it's there. We just have to find it again, right? Yeah. So, do you have any concluding thoughts for us today?
Well, what you were just saying makes me think of something I heard of recently, and I've perused their website a little bit, and I'm thinking of diving in further. Maybe you've heard of Braver Angels.
I've heard the
Braver.
term.
It's a group that is trying to help close the gap between the Republicans and Democrats. I think basically it's just about those two parties still, and you're talking about a broader party system. And I'm with you on that. I think we do need to move beyond the duopoly idea, the uniparty. But in the meantime, listening, I agree with you, is extremely important. Being able to remember we're family, we're friends, we're all we care, we're bright, and just to and Marianne Williamson actually talked in this way about the spiritual necessity for us to evolve spiritually in order to evolve politically. So she's a candidate that I think got the short end of the stick as well.
It wasn't just Bobby Kennedy. And by the way, Bobby and Marianne, I think, had a lot of similar sentiments in what they had to say. There was a lot of common ground there. They both got treated the same way by the DNC, as did Cornel West, as did Phillips from Minnesota.
Yeah. Right? Okay. There's one I don't know. 𝐏𝐞𝐲'𝐫, I love him too. Yeah. Well, my closing thoughts, I guess, are, I would say I'm enjoying the process of waking up. The waking up and learning more and entering this world of politics where I was inspired. I was inspired by RFK Jr. I've written some other songs that I think, one is called, it's a slightly corny title, but it's called Let Love Lead the Way. And that's about healing the divide as well, just so we could talk to one another again.
Doesn't sound corny to me.
Yeah.
Sounds just like what we need.
Yeah. And I'm pleased that my songs might be pertinent in some way, or healing, or help someone with something. But the people that I've met, just to end on a very positive note, to have been inspired about 1.5 years ago by that campaign announcement of RFK Jr.'s, and to have met the people that I've met, such as yourself, who I feel like a fish who's found her water. We discuss these things and we make sense to one another, and we can find a way forward by making efforts and taking actions. And I don't feel as powerless as I did. I don't feel as, filled with sorrow that just, what do we do? Here I've found people who have ideas about what we can do. And there are worse things than dying, like living without trying. I feel like I'm trying now, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I'm not alone, and that the people that I'm meeting are just extraordinary. So I'm grateful, even though things aren't going the way I would have hoped. This time, maybe there's a start. I think we're moving the needle, and I'm going to keep on this track.
The winds of change are blowing, Dana, and we can help direct the sails, and that's what we're here to do. I want to thank you. I think you might be invited to become a regular podcast guest on this Curators. This is not like a one and done, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, Paul, I would love that.
Okay, and until next time, I want to thank you for being with us, and we're going to go out with one of your incredible songs. Go to SoundCloud and listen to Dana's music. It's incredible.
Thank you so much.
This one is the song that she referenced, and we talked about There Are Worse Things Than Dying.
That the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
He has a calling.
People move about like sheep, like they're walking in their sleep. Who could blame them if they're numb, when we're gaslit from sun to sun? Punished just for being poor, while billionaires take more. The constant threat of war, no idea what we're fighting for. There are worse things than dying, like living without trying. There are far worse things than dying. Believe me, I know. precious planet burns. If I step up to the plate, will I suffer the same fate as those before me, far more great? Am I